Hey there, film fans. I'm Jeff.
I'm Dave.
And I'm John, and welcome back to The Love of Cinema, a pod in which we'll challenge one another to discuss movies, both new and old, with a strictly positive critical eye.
That's right. And to avoid lazy negativity, we've decided to make this episode a drinking game. Anytime you hear us say anything negative about this movie, each other, anything at all, you're going to hear this sound. That sound means we need to take a drink, and we hope you drink along with us.
That's right. So pour yourselves a glass as we get ready for our opening shot. Talk about a film that is almost the perfect ad for Arizona, making it appealing.
We have to go back to Arizona. I can't believe we ever left.
Arizona tourism needs to see this film.
Shout out to Arizona for electing a Democratic senator.
Oh,
and
yeah.
governor. That was the governor was called as well.
Yeah.
No, the governor. Yeah. So anyway, okay. Kudos. Great. So, people, we are talking about The Fabelmans today. This is directed by Steven Spielberg.
First time filmmaker.
Spielberg.
Yeah. Finally gave him a shot.
Yeah.
This
finally
movie,
give him a nice limited cinema release.
This movie, it makes it no question of how this genius rose. The only question is you watching this movie, you're like, of course he's going to be a successful filmmaker. The only question that remains is, what happened with 1941?
Don't anger that guy again. That guy came at us real hard.
All right, guys, we're going to get to The Fabelmans soon. If you're new to our podcast, we are, as we mentioned, The Love of Cinema. We try to keep it spoiler-free for about 10 minutes or so in case you haven't seen this film. We've been doing a lot of the limited release movies. So some other limited release movies we did this past summer, which are now streaming, include things like Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, starring The Crown's Leslie Manville. Ooh. We saw that. That's on Peacock now, as is The Outfit and The Phantom of the Open. And, of course, we've done all the hits. Thor, Love and Thunder, Morbius, right? We did Doctor Strange,
Top Gun,
Venom. We did, yeah. So we follow us, people. We like to drink and talk about movies. All right, we're gonna get to The Fabelmans. Let's go to our sponsors first. John, you want to shout them out?
Sure. Carlos Barroso is our beer sponsor. He has a handle, cbarroso.beer, CBARROZO.beer on the Instagram if you want to give that man a little like and follow and check out all those beer making shenanigans. And the music on this episode and every single episode is provided by the artist Dasein. That's Dasein, Dasein, available on all music platforms for free. All right, I'm excited.
Nice. Last thing I'll say before we go is at the end of the episode and every episode, we give you our recommendations, what we've been watching for the week. So we hope you stick around for that. Last thing we have to do, the last piece of business, people, is our gripes of the week. Each of us gets 1 minute to get anything we want off our chest. If you guys have 10 minutes and you just want to hear about the Fabelmans, go ahead and skip. But this is our lives, people. This is what we do.
I'm so glad we separate our audio.
Gentlemen, do either of you have a gripe of the week that you want to put into our Fabelmans episode here? We're going to be doing our Black Panther Wakanda Forever episode right after this. We're going to be a little loose for that. So I'm wondering what you're going to choose for this one.
A little bit of one when I was walking to the theater, and it seems to be that season again where...
Set that timer, you coward.
Oh, come on. It seems to be that season again where we're getting not only people on their phones, just people generally walking and zigzagging up the fucking sidewalk. So if you're at like New York speed and you're trying to you get stuck behind someone, you go right, they go right, you go left, they go left. What the fuck is so hard with walking in a fucking straight line? The sidewalk is divided into squares. There's literally a fucking line up the middle of the sidewalk that you can just follow. But no, you're over here and then you're over there. It's like, get the fuck out of the way.
To New York tourists, they're the worst.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Honestly,
there have been more tourists lately.
I feel like a Formula One driver when I'm about to pass someone. I'm like, oh no, they're going to ram into me. They're going to kick me off the course. Like,
dude, I was like motoring towards someone, and they literally just had their head in their phone, zigzagging, couldn't get around them, and suddenly they got something on their phone that was interesting. They just fucking stopped. We became very close friends, unintentionally.
Right. Just grab some things they didn't want to grab. Dave, good gripe. Also, fuck Max Verstappen. Let's
Jeff,
move on.
you don't have a gripe?
Well, of course I have a fucking gripe. But do you want to talk about anything, John?
No, I tune in every week so I can hear you complain about something.
Okay, no, but
that's why I'm here.
No, but I do not have. This is not a funny gripe. I have a somber gripe, and I'm serious. I'm not kidding. I'm not trying to set you up. I have a somber gripe, and then I'll do the funnier gripe for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. But somber gripe.
All right.
You ready?
Sure.
I'm serious. Now I'm laughing during this, but I can't.
No, I'm still gonna laugh.
Guys, we have to stop naming shooters. We have to stop it. I got a thing today about this UVA shooting from all these different sites, and all of them, all they did was talk about this shooter. I don't give a fuck about the shooter. I don't care about him at all. I don't care about where he grew up. I don't care if his neighbors are surprised that he did it. I don't care. He was an athlete, so now all the sports sites are telling me about this because he was on the UVA. He was on one of the teams. I don't give a fuck. I don't care about any of them, and that's all anybody wants to care about. The victims become pooled together into this little glot.
Yep,
I don't even know if
montage.
that's a word. They just put it all together and they're like, they are now the victims from there. But this person, and then we hear about their life. And it's such horseshit every single time. We get sucked in by the bait, and it allows these people to not only have a megaphone, but they go out in this blaze of glory. And it's so fucked up. And I know we're talking about movies and we're not talking
And
about
also,
that kind of shit.
like,
But
there's
it's
been
so stupid. It's so fucking
There's
stupid.
been 3
all these
this
news sites
week.
just
I
need to
can
call each
barely
other.
remember you guys' names. I don't need to add 3 fucking more.
Yeah, so that's it. That's my gripe. It's fucking stupid, and we need our news sites. They're just in competition with each other. They want to be the one to get it out. They want the engagements. They want the clicks, and it's so fucking stupid.
You went over
That's my
time,
gripe.
so
Damn it.
Fear sells, man.
That's it.
They made a fucking fictionalized narrative series about Jeffrey Dahmer. I mean, come on.
I know it's
like
complicated. We love
Never meet your
Booth
heroes.
and Oswald, who, by the way, Oswald didn't do it, but Oswald and Dahmer and the Unabomber. I know it's complicated, but I know what the Colorado guy looks like. I don't need to know his name. I don't need to know where he went to preschool. You know what I mean? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
On a chipper note, you guys ready to talk about this movie?
yeah, let's give it a shot.
That's right. So this is a coming-of-age story about a Jewish family right outside of Manhattan who has to move to a different school where they're prejudiced. But no, I'm not talking about Armageddon time, people. We are talking about The Fabelmans.
Oh, yeah.
Steven Spielberg's mostly autobiographical story where he... What did I hear somebody say today that I thought was really great? It's his autobiographical movie, but it's not about him. It was something. It was profound as fuck.
I was going to say, if
I'm
it was
messing up
someone
in the
saying,
intro.
get the fuck out of the way on the sidewalk, you stop looking at your phone, it was me.
Yeah.
I can't buzz you because I deserve that, and I'll buzz myself. Okay,
We'll get away with that.
so I guess to keep him in check, Spielberg hired his now favorite writing partner, certainly of the past couple of years, and Munich, one of Steven's best movies of the 20s tech. Maybe his singular best movie. We love West Side Story, but Munich, guys, best movie of the 2000s by Spielberg.
It's a tough race.
So Tony Kushner is back to co-write with Steve this script about the Fabelmans, which of course is the replacement for the Spielbergs. His parents are Michelle Williams and Paul Dano. Paul Dano can do whatever the fuck he wants. He can be the Riddler. He can be this. It's so funny. I mean, he can't be like Chris Pine, but like, God, he just, whatever they want to do is amazing. Gabriel LaBelle stars as the teenage version of young Steven Spielberg in this movie named Sam Fabelman. Seth Rogen. Smoked a bunch of weed and was in this movie. Judd Hirsch makes a cameo. And that's probably it of the major names that you would know. A lot of familiar faces.
There's
have
one
some
when we get to
cameos here and
spoilers,
there.
but yeah.
One in the end when we get to the spoilers, which I thought was super, super fun. But that's it. It's about the Spielberg families from when he was very, very young, living in New Jersey, to moving to Arizona, getting his filmmaking career going, and eventually ends up in California as a young man, off to make movies. Fabelmans, 2 hours and 31 minutes. Currently in limited release, opening wide next week, November 23rd, 2022. Who would like to take it away with your initial, whatever. That's the pitch. I don't need to read the description. Who wants to take it away with your initial reactions?
What did that
What'd you think?
fucking
What'd you
desk
feel?
ever do to you? You've been punching it since the show started.
Have I? I just want to make sure I want to mess with my audio as much as
you
possible.
might not know. We know. Everyone listening knows. People are sitting on the train right now going, shaking their head.
That's right. Dave,
kick it off.
Why do you
Dave.
go
What do you
first?
think, man?
It was funny because I first heard about this. I didn't even know they were making it. I first heard about this from John. And he was like, yeah, we've got to see this. We've got to do this. And I was like, all right, it sounds interesting. And then a couple of weeks ago, we did Armageddon Time. And again, that did not sit well with me as well as it probably could have. So I went into this with a little bit of trepidation. Then I saw the runtime and I was like, oh my God, it's like 2.5 hours. So I walked in and I sat down and the theater was packed, man. And
mine too.
Yeah, and
fucking packed.
Although I must admit, there was a guy behind me who was literally counting the minutes that the pre-show went for. It's like, it's up to 20 now. It's up to 22 now. So like, I was very amused by that running narrative. Got to the movie and the movie started, and there is not a moment of this film that didn't resonate with every fucking core of my being. I'm not kidding. This might be the best film I've seen all year. And this is the same week I went and saw Black Panther. So, like, yeah, I saw them a day apart, and yeah, I cannot fault this. Absolutely can't fault it. There's not a department on this production that wasn't an absolute fucking A game.
See
this movie.
The Mark Rylance.
Done.
The Mark Rylance line is masters of every
man.
craft. Masters of every craft.
Yeah, honestly, I think ultimately I'm going to really agree that I enjoyed this. And we're going to talk more when we get into spoiler sections about his life leading up to this point. Cause like, he's like Hitchcock. Like his name was synonymous with movies for so long, especially when I was a kid. I don't remember life before the name Spielberg was
Fabelman?
A part of pop culture.
Spielberg, right.
Yeah. So, of course, movies.
Yeah, I was reaching for it.
Yeah. Fucking terrible. That might be my only criticism, was the name of their last names. Well, I will say this, that Elizabeth was asking me on the way there. She's like, so are you excited? And I was like, yeah, for sure. I think my only reticence may be that it could live in a sentimental place that the trailer kind of shows. And Spielberg is shameless about his sentimentality. Every critic, for better or for worse, on his side or against him, all acknowledges that he can be overly sentimental. And this movie opens with a very, very sentimental sequence of them taking to him to see a movie with really sentimental, nostalgic, cheesy lines. And I remember thinking, like, I was like, I think he's doing this to just make a point that, like, it felt like this to him, and it will turn into something else, and it does. This evolves structurally, thematically, tonally, the humor. This evolves into a very unique coming of age story that was much more than I was expecting. I was expecting, this movie is divided into several sections pretty neatly with with like different stages of his family, either in geographical proximity, age, dramatic events. And I was expecting this movie to kind of be all, or feel the way it does in his middle school years when he's first falling in love with movies. I did not see the next section coming. And I liked the way they ended up ending it. And I was just so pleasantly surprised. And I think more than anything else, and I don't know why this was so shocking to me, I guess he doesn't really work in comedy very much, as we alluded to with The Ultimate Failure in 1941. This movie made me laugh a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I found so much wonderful humor that I'm excited to talk with you guys about, not just in the performances, but setups, the writing. There were literally written jokes that really landed really well. And just, I don't know why I was surprised by this. He's always worked really well with children. He found so much minutia in the society of childhood that I thought was really, really effective. And of course, the whole thing felt like Steven Spielberg was making a home movie. It didn't feel like it was gigantic. It felt like he was making a big movie for a teenager, which just obviously that just fit perfectly with, where he was taking us back to. So unless you really, really hate Steven Spielberg, I'll give it 2 thumbs up. I think you're gonna have a good time.
I agree. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Talk.
Good job.
Next
No,
week.
I couldn't agree more. What I will say too is really cool. I saw this during the day on Saturday, I think. I had to sit off to the side because it was fucking packed, this theater. And
Mine was packed too. Yeah, I didn't say that, but mine was packed as well.
I mean, still in limited release, of course, but older audience for the most part. And everybody in the audience was laughing like crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy. There were audio issues, and everybody was very quiet. I loved at the very end of the movie, 2 guys were like, let's go get some free tickets. And I was like, yeah, all right, you fucking guys. I guess A-list doesn't help me in that regard. But there were some jokes, especially the Jewish Christian jokes that come in like the teen years, fucking killed in this theater. Like people
me
were.
too. There must have been tons of Jewish people in my audience. They were rolling, dude.
Applause.
I loved it so much.
It's like the one line that was like, not to spoil, but it's like, oh, I don't know, we've gotten along just fine for 5,000 years, and every single person in the theater is like, oh my god. It's funny because I did read one teeny. I wasn't trying to read the reviews. This is reviewed very highly, 86 Metacritic. But somebody said like, despite the fact that the narrative is clunky or something, and it's like bullshit. Go fuck yourself.
Absolute bullshit.
I think you just have to think about it like chapters almost, right? Is that a fair assessment where you have these different parts of his life, and rather than connect them with the singular, it's a fucking autobiography. Whoever wrote that, your autobiography would suck. I know it would suck because you would try to create this narrative, or you would just tell this epic tale of everything you've done, and it would bore the fuck out of everybody. Yeah, but like,
even though we agree,
he chose these times, and you know, it's going to actually take a lot of time to unravel because it was so simple. But it's like, okay, is it to show where he came from? You know, if you know your Steve, like we always talk about like the different layers. The great film is the kind of film where if you just want to be entertained, you can just be entertained. If you want to be like the Beatles, where you go and you read 10 hours worth of books and watch 10 hours worth of documentaries and then re-listen to an album and the album's better, you know, that the Beatles must be really good. Or you can just listen and say that song's fun. But this movie, like, he's even talked about like Saving Private Ryan was his dad's movie because his dad was a World War II veteran of sorts. I think he was a veteran. I forget exactly what his task was.
Yeah, he was in India, but he was in World War II, but he didn't fight in the Europe.
And his mom was Jewish from Europe, so the Schindler's List was his mom's movie. So if you really want to dive into your Steve, you could sit there and be like, well, maybe this movie is about how he's a little bit of his mom and a little bit of his dad, so you can see how he was made. But that's not even really doing justice to this story. There's this story about lust. There's a story about being the outsider, being the insider, being the outsider, being the watcher. All of these different themes, they're everywhere. But honestly, all they do is just support these very simple little, I'm gonna call them chapters because I don't have a better word for it right now, of his life that were shot brilliantly. They were so captivating and joyous. And yeah, it's 2.5 hours, but it went really quick.
It did. It felt like a 90-minute film.
And then there was a coda, and of course I was kind of, not a real coda, but you know, for all intents and purposes, it was a coda. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know. Well, let's see what the point of this is. And it was like a proper coda. It was just like, I feel like I want to put this in my movie. And it's like, I feel like the audience like really respected that. Like glad they didn't try to like tell us what Rosebud is. He just wanted to tell this little thing at the end. And it was like, yes, this is the perfect way to end this movie. Because it was kind of like, I hope you guys had a good time here with my movie at the end of this.
It really
I thought it was beautiful. It was great.
Jeff, I think you're totally right, dude. I think I think that structure thing so many things we're going to praise him for, and you know, how difficult is that? He's a great director, obviously, but the person who thinks that this should have a neater structure, this shouldn't be as interesting. I think we think this is a positive. That would have been the trap of a commercial filmmaker like Spielberg. I love that he said, no, him and Tony clearly were like, let's not do that. Like, we're not going to do Stand By Me. You know, that's been done before. This isn't a clean arc. I kind of want to just jump all over the place and let's just try to find some truth in that life every step we go. And because of that, I think it ended up being a more interesting structural film than he tends to be drawn to. I mean, he tends to be drawn towards very, very classical cinematic 3-act structures, sometimes 5-act structures. And this did not feel that way. And the fact that it was all coming through the genre of coming of age, those tend to have very unique, very similar structures. There's ways that we introduce the types of obstacles, the types of trauma. You see them deal with it. You don't think it's going to work out. And then maybe they'll get a pinch at the end where they decide to move on or they overcome that trauma. And this was like, it was none of that and more than that. Like it really did feel like I felt like I was watching, and part of it does help that he was so young when he kind of makes that final move. We didn't see them cast a new actor and see him in his 40s and finally making it as a film. That's not his life. He got to start like becoming the freak that he became very soon after those last events at high school.
Have you heard
a lot of time didn't pass?
Gabriel talking about when he got the role and he was cast as like teenage Sammy, and he thought it was just going to be for like a section of the film, and then he got to like past young Sammy and he got to teenage Sammy. He's like, all right, where do I check out? And he just kept going and going and going and realized he was like the star of the film. Like he thought he was auditioning for a very small part. He nailed it.
He nailed it. I mean, they really made him look like him as he got older too. Like those young pictures of him in his
even without
late
the
teens
look.
and early 20s. Yeah, it was beautiful.
You know,
All right, guys, let's move into spoilers. Because I want to
actually before we do, I just want to quickly talk about cinematography because there are some shots and like shot composition in this that is
Janusz.
there's that literally like intake of breath, beautiful in the framing.
Oh, do you want to give a few? There's a couple that are in the trailer that you can probably allude to. But until we go to spoilers.
There's one in a corridor when they're like at some point they go to prom during the movie and he's just outside there in the corridor and he gets frustrated and slouches against a wall and slides down it. And the point that he finishes at, he's perfectly framed in the camera. Like there's just this equal left and right. Everything is like you look at it and you go, everything's where it's supposed to be. Every time they track during the house when they move from one room to another, like it's the whole thing. Like it's noticeably beautiful if you know what to look for. This was perfection on camera.
He is, and this will be the beginning of the praise. We can just go ahead and hit the spoiler button because we're going to move into it now. But
actually, before I think we should hit this one. But
sure. I guess Steven Spielberg made a pretty good movie. Shocking.
All right, we're going to move into spoilers.
I came home and ended up watching over a couple days that Spielberg documentary that was on HBO. And I watched it when it came out several years ago, and I used to have a lot of conflict with him because he was.
We watched it together. Didn't we watch that together?
Probably, yeah. I know I've seen it at least once, and it was after the 2018. Did we watch that together? I thought it came out a little bit later after you moved. Anyway,
I watched with you.
I used to have a lot of conflict with his sentimentality, and he's almost so perfect that there's almost like God, give me some. Where it's almost like it's lacking humanity because the execution is so perfect. It's just so good that it's kind of like where's the humanity? But you know what? That documentary and just the more research you do, and especially now that he's getting into this wonderful tender age where he really is. He's opening up and making very romantic films, and it is him. Like that is him. It is his truth, and you got to just respect that. But there are some things that, despite his truth coming through his work, it's just he just sees where a camera should go. And what you're talking about, Dave, like we talked about it a lot in West Side Story. His camera blocking is unparalleled, dude. The way it moves, a filmmaker might be able to notice, like, holy crap, how did he block it that way? But you watch them as not a filmmaker, and you have no idea. It's just what life feels like. Like, I never ever thought about his camera movements when I was a kid, and I didn't know anything about movie making.
There's never a thought the camera. Yeah, there's never a thought the camera should be somewhere else. Like it's exactly where it should be. And it's so exciting
too because he, for many many years, did a lot of his own camera operating. He's always very, very, very handsy with composition and lens choices and stuff. But for a lot of years, Janusz would help him light it, and Steven would still operate the camera. And and it doesn't seem to be failing at all. So, like, what does that say about his skill as a director and his relationship with a cinematographer? That kind of quality that we see, it seems to be such a strong through line throughout his work, isn't failing at all. It's getting even stronger. The movement in West Side was fucking perfection. I thought this was to take that kind of filmmaking, which tends to belong on technocranes and camera handoffs and long moving.
What about Ready Player One, where they handed me an electronic device and that was the camera?
Yeah, ridiculous.
Like he had so much fun with that too. You can see if you watch the documentary on that, he had so much fun with that thing.
He's like a little kid. But the same thing here, like he was like, okay, I actually have a ceiling in this house, and we're just going to shoot on this street, and this boy only has this perspective this big and these limitations, and it still felt like a Spielberg movie. Like that's fucking crazy. Just what he was able to, it just proves to you that like you can give that guy $10 and he'll probably make a better short film on his iPhone than like most of us can make with $20 fucking million. Like
I could not make that train movie that 5-year-old Steven Spielberg made.
I know it.
When they started doing with the different angles and stuff, I was like, how is he doing this with the same set?
When he said it to the mom, right?
That's actually one, like you could see, like that was one of the shots that translated well for me when he sat down and looked at it coming at him. And it was like he was duplicating the frame. But it wasn't just that. There was a moment of you saw him realize where the camera needed to be. It was like being the front of the camera looking at him. You saw the realization in that kid's eyes of like, this is exactly where the camera was for this shot. Right, they translated that so well.
It also showed us the first ever Spielberg push in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I will say, in that same moment, that's kind of what I'm talking about. I didn't need the parents to say the lines. He needs to control his anxiety with the camera. Like they had a scene about it. And I was like, we got it. Like the shot you're talking about, Dave, like we got it. Crystal clear. We knew what was happening with that little boy. The silence on the way back from the greatest story ever told. And the greatest show on earth, excuse me. And this kid was in shock. You know, we got it.
I don't know if he'd be going to see greatest story ever told.
No, probably not.
I'll take that.
When he, but I believe this moment probably happened at moments like this when she was watching his film for the first time, the train crash, and all those angles that we didn't see get covered in the making of it with his mom. And he just looks at her, and you could tell she's like, "What the hell?" And he's like, "I had to crash it a lot of times so that I could get all the different angles." And it's just like, click, like this little fucking freak of nature just understood that it's not interesting enough to only see it the way I saw it. I have to make all the audience feel what I saw leading up to that moment.
That was his first discussion with the producer. It's like, yeah, we had to crash this a lot of times. So.
So cute. And the little, of course, we're just going in order now. The montage with the sisters, and they're in the documentary that Jeff and I were talking about. Like, they referred to him just dressing them up and scaring them and getting them to do all sorts of shit.
Yep.
It was charming and effective. Like, I think that's what this movie really captured throughout, was that there was a lot of charm. You know, it gets a little bit more dramatic, but it never lost like the, holy shit, this kid's a prodigy. Like, it didn't feel like Mozart, and it didn't feel like.
I'll just quickly. I'll just let you know a few reasons why it resonated with me. Was like there is like 8mm footage of me picking up a camera and making my family do shit and like acting out little things and stuff like that. So I was like, that kind of resonated. And then the same thing with like the parents eventually going through divorce. Same thing like with me. So like I feel like I had some of his upbringing.
Yeah.
Like, or I mirrored some of the stuff that happened throughout his life with me. And of course I went into the creative industry, and when you get Judd Hirsch in there as the uncle,
oh my God,
who gives him that space, it was amazing. The
unbelievable.
He embodies that terrifying shape of his uncle, and it'll tear your heart in two speech. Oh my God. My heart nearly fucking stopped, because I was like, he's nailed it. He's absolutely nailed it. Like, yeah, it'll tear your heart in two. It'll separate you from your family. All of these things happens. Like when you throw yourself into the craft. Like my family got used to seeing me in a box at Christmas because I'd Skype in because I was somewhere doing a show or, doing something. And everything he said just hit me right in the fucking feels. I felt like
the boy in that scene, the look on his face of just terror.
Yeah, I was looking at it from the back end.
We love our family. You love this more. You know, it's just
you have to get the loosen the tie. Yeah.
Seriously, right then and there, it made me think about it. It's like, I'm turning 50 this year, and I started in the entertainment industry when I was 18, and I've done nothing but. Except that one night where I was like serving shrimp at a light and sound conference. But like,
no, you nailed it.
Yeah, and
honestly, no, you're right.
It does though. It like you have to give something up to get that.
Yeah, I couldn't help but think of.
So I would like to be Spielberg now, please, because I've given a lot.
Yeah, where's your $300 million?
You're our Spielberg, Dave.
I loved the fact that I kept seeing
Chinese
it from
knockoff Spielberg.
I kept seeing it from Steve, because Spielberg famously has a lot of kids. He's like a bunch of children, a lot of kids. I believe he has like a big family.
Like 8.
But then you hear stories. Back to the documentary we talked about, John, where he was like, he did like Hook and Jurassic Park and Schindler's List, like kind of back to back. Like in the timeline of when they came out, it doesn't seem like it, but with pre-pro, and his pre-pro is like 2 years for some of these things, that it's like he's like getting calls from Robin Williams while he's on the set for Schindler's List, and then he's always, it's like, where does he spend time with his 8 kids? You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't help but think that. I was like, whatever he did, he managed it. I'm not assuming he's a bad father or anything, but like, it's like, thank God he made a lot of money.
Dude, a call from Robin Williams is like 8 minutes of call in 30 seconds. So
he said cheer me up from doing
the guy talks
Schindler's
that
List.
fast.
Yeah. I rewatched
I
that,
miss Robin.
which I took with.
No, Jeff, you're right, dude. I feel like it's I mean, he is so prolific, and as I got older and I started thinking and learning more about the businesses that he ran and how much of an active producer he was in DreamWorks and Amblin, just he's constantly ushering projects throughout all of these things that he did by himself. Honestly, I feel like there's a piece of us that there's not even a strong enough way to say this, but like you take someone like that for granted when they become such a staple in the background. Like we take for granted that we happen to grow up in the age of Lucas and Spielberg kind of dominating. That didn't exist until them. You know what I mean? And it might not exist.
Not individuals.
It might not exist after them. I mean, it's just nuts. And I feel like the fact that this real group of friends that they all eventually became friends together, Martin Scorsese and Lucas, Coppola, De Palma, and Spielberg. It's just very unique that they found each other, but that this version of him that he basically is trying to. I don't want the symbolism to become too literal, but growing up with these two kinds of parents, one who was this kind of whimsical, albeit maybe eccentric artist type that clearly had an enormous amount of talent, and with the piano, I guess she was talented. And then also that his father was like a genius. That's something that I kind of couldn't stop thinking about, because in the documentary and in all of his movies, you see a bunch of father issues. They're always there. And again, he may explore them with a little bit too much sentimentality for some people, but they're there. And I guess I didn't really think about it until I was watching this movie that apparently he was not good at math. And his father was like a fucking computer genius. I can't imagine what that must have made him feel like. And obviously, like, don't think about who he became and the most successful, filmmaker of all time. Like I can't imagine what that kind of, stunting shadow did to him when he was a kid, as he was developing a prodigy level talent. They never made this father figure seem like, yeah, he called it a hobby, but he was never like fucking give me a camera and throwing it against a wall and grounding him. It never got that dramatic. But just to have a man like that saying like, are you sure you want to do this? Like it's, I think you'll work hard at it, but like there's real things to be done here. And like, I feel kind of like you might be not really applying yourself as well. Did he need that? I guess that's kind of what I kept thinking about. It's not Beethoven's father. It's not Mozart's father. It's not the abusive guy, but clearly it ended up yielding somebody who can't get over their family's issues, and it's given them a lot to work with. I don't know.
I thought it was fascinating that, and we are talking about the movie just in case anybody's zoning out a little bit.
This isn't therapy.
This is all in the movie, but I thought it was fascinating. Gender is a topic of discussion that comes up a lot, but when you're the only boy with three sisters, you essentially are sitting there being like, well, the father, that's who. I just imagine, especially at this time period, it's like, well, this is what men do. This is how men behave. Steve, you have to do that. And he was clearly his mom's son. And I feel like they did a good job of that, but not Monday morning quarterbacking it and explaining it to us, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like this is not something that a lot of people would have necessarily even picked up on. But when you have a huge family with mostly women around the house, and the dad is just, he essentially felt the same way about his design work as Steve felt about movies, where he was like, this is my work. This is my calling. I need to I need to move to California. There's no question about going back. This is my job, yada, 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 which is very similar to the artistic pursuit. And Steve is like, I'm with my mom. And now all of a sudden he has, I'm not saying gender identity issues, but like it adds this complexity and nuance that is just simple in the movie because it's not hammered home. It's not something that they have to harp on a lot. Even when he's getting bullied, he doesn't sit there and be like, well, what is it to be a man? Like, he just kind of keeps moving about his day. And I thought that was brilliant. Back to what you were saying about the friends, though, it's cool basically with this chapter idea where he kind of starts out as like the loner who needs his sisters and his family, as most kids do, like most of the time you spend with your family, you don't get to run around with your friends all the time. But then when you see him in that middle section, you see what a great friend he is, and yes, it's kind of selfish because he wants to make his movies his way.
I just want to correct you though. That thing about most of the time you spend with your family, from about 85 backwards, that was not the case. You were gone for a lot of the time.
Good point.
Yeah.
Touche. Good point. Touche. Okay, forget I said that then. Whatever. I'm moving on.
But then when you see him, not know where the fuck you were from like 8 a.m. until about 7 p.m. when it got dark.
Well, to talk about the performances, before we get to how Michelle Williams might win an Academy Award for this performance, which would give Steve 2 in a row for this category. The boy, Gabriel LaBelle is the guy who plays Teenage Steve, basically. The fact that he plays that kind of big BMOC, like kind of big man on campus at that Arizona school where he's the filmmaker and such, and he has all these friends, and it's all about the movies, it's all about the art and play, and then switches, and then he's getting bullied at this high school is crazy nuanced, and to see these different levels of Steve, but not just Steve, of all artists, that you are all of these different things. You're not just the cool kid or the jock or the whatever. You develop many different identities along the way, and artists tend to have done more. Very rarely is it just like the really cool kid the whole way through, and then they become successful, empathetic, emotionally mature, transcending talents. You know, like to have taken on all these different layers, I thought was detailed so well in here. But this is my segue to talk about the performances, because the performances are great. The Michelle Williams with the piano and the music, you could, like, again, back to Steve, you could see he understands composition and tone and things that are ephemeral. They're not just tactile camera operating, cutting, film together things. It's like the heart and the soul and the reason and the why of his art. You could see it be developed with his family. And to be a part of that, I thought it was, I can't imagine doing a better job.
Like Michelle Williams as well, where she was like holding it together with the rental house, and the house that they were building was going to be the thing that fixed it. You got that impression that, like, once we got in that house, everything was going to be okay. And then she couldn't even walk in that house.
She couldn't, and of course she didn't unwrap the piano, which is
slow disintegration into, like, I need to go.
And she couldn't use the piano while he couldn't use the camera. Do you see how that lined up?
Mm-hmm. That was some solid writing there.
Because they're the same.
The other thing I noticed as well with LaBelle's performance, and or with the way the character developed, when you start filming things, you start to see things through a lens. And there were certain times where, like, the family was dealing with grief and stuff, and in the mirror you saw him tracking with a camera. Yeah. And I recognized that, and I was like, oh shit. Like that is where you start. That's where you start to distance yourself from reality and humanity, and literally just become the camera. And it's one of those things. It's a very scary place to go to, like, as a filmmaker. It is
very scary. And I had the same thing, and I'll never, I had a young memory at a funeral when I was in my, like, teenage years, and all I could do was look at the widow. I wasn't in the moment at all. I was just watching this woman, like, what was she going through? And when you do it well, though, and I think I think that moment is supposed to be kind of scary, but again, this is such a meta project. When you do it well, you're kind of like, I'll sacrifice my humanity in this moment to try to capture everybody else's. I mean, I can at least lift everyone's up.
Other people might have got more, like, something else out of that, but that scared the shit out of me.
No. I think it's very unsettling.
I caught myself doing that.
Well, not to mention that sequence happened after the brilliantly Michael Kahn, good job, brilliantly edited reveal sequence in the edit, the 8mm edit machine, when he finally sees. Gosh, the editing of that sequence was fantastic.
His camera was loaded, by the way. Every time he appeared with that camera, that thing had film in it.
Oh, good.
So what he was shooting was recorded.
There's a movie of that. There's a movie of that. The sequence where he finally puts together and sees what his camera was seeing. And to your point, Dave, it's interesting because I was thinking about this while they were showing us this sequence. He was behind the camera, obviously, especially back then. That little Bolex had a viewfinder. So that's the physical thing that your eye goes into, folks. So he was looking through that lens the entire time. This is the power of filmmaking. It wasn't until he was editing and he was looking at it as a storyteller that he was able to see and capture the story of his mom and Bert or Pete, or what was that guy's name? Benny, whatever the character's name is. So that was also something that, again, I don't think everybody in the audience who's not a filmmaker was thinking about that, but I couldn't help but ignore, like, he's making a point here that there is something, that there's a different mindset when you are just the capturer, not a lowercase j, but when you are capturing versus when you are putting together a movie. These are different parts. These are different things. There are different things that are firing, and just the way that they made all that connect. Dave, that shot, the shot where he backs up against the wall after when he freaks out and goes against the wall, and doesn't it come down and like you see him like just over the moviola machine. I was just like, oh my God, like his whole life was probably like, I feel like at that moment he was like, I can't
there was also,
not do this
that
anymore.
that was also the point where he kind of realized the power that you have with that, where he can, with his editing, he could, and
truth.
He could destroy someone. Like he could literally destroy his own world. In that, like, when he put that movie on for the family, I didn't know which way that was going to go. I was like, he's standing there at the door. He's looking pretty mad.
I thought
are we going to get the fucking
reveal,
edit,
right?
Which edit are we going to get here?
He might have given the other one.
Yeah.
Well, two things to that. I think one thing, and this is just what I got, I'm sure everybody will get something different, but he essentially didn't, exactly what you're saying, John, he didn't notice that until he looked at the edit, and he cut it out. He edited it out. Mm-hmm. And then when he showed the movie, it wasn't just like he felt like he wasn't telling the full story. And I don't know if he felt like a liar or whatever, but he just seemed, he wasn't happy with the film that they were like, good job. He didn't sit there and be like, that was good. I wish I could tell you more. Like he clearly was hurt by it. And then the beach sequence, even the guy he didn't like, he basically was like, but that's the story that I got. You know, like that's how it is. So it's almost like he learned this weird lesson of it's like, you can't cut out the shit. And, you know, you have to let the story tell itself and you just have to be in service of it. That's sort of the weird lesson that I got from that. But furthermore, it was also this weird lesson about like lying and telling the truth, because I bet you it surprised him to see that about his mom. But if he really is the parallel of his mom, he probably knows that he's capable of doing that. And so it's such a small detail because there's no divorce and children involved. But I think it's important the way they chose the words of when the girl like broke up with him. When I think she said something like, we have to be honest with each other. And it's like, he's been living a lie this whole time. Like, why should we be rooting for that? He's not going to be Christian for her. Like, you know what I mean? He's fucking lying to her. And it's not the same kind of lying as the mom.
I will never die.
Exactly. And he's so shocked by this. He's like, what? And then it's like, you're not living your honest, truthful life. You're cutting out shit. You're lying. You're doing these things. And of course he's a kid. So, but all kids have to learn this lesson, but this is a coming of age story, and that is life and death at that age. And I got that from like paralleling with filmmaking. You know what I mean? So like, that's how he became him. Like learning those lessons, not by learning how to use a camera. You know what I mean?
I feel like using the camera was installed. Like he came with that installed. It was just waiting. It was just waiting for him to pick it up. Like,
and it's great because, like, you know, it's funny when he's looking back. I get this so meta. You know, it's him. So I'm sorry, but like I can't help but think that he's looking back on his life when he wants to make a movie like this about himself as a young person. He's looking back on it, and for the better part of his 20s and 30s, he still kind of fought this a little bit. Critics called him out for it all the time, that he kind of stayed in that safe commercial place. The sentiment was really up front. He didn't really break that until Schindler's List. I think that's when a lot of people kind of finally said, like, okay, now the gloves are off and you're unafraid of confronting your Jewish heritage and taking that taking the camera off the techno crane and actually getting in people's faces and make us actually feel something that is totally real. And obviously he's developed it more and more as he's gone on over the past, few decades. And I guess I just can't help but wonder, like, the artist kind of looking back, I wonder if he kind of was trying to show these moments in this film as these were opportunities that I began to see what I could be, but I was still afraid to not just film the sweet shot. I love that sequence at the end where I'm not disagreeing with you, Jeff. I thought it was a really interesting, complex scene where the high school golden boy gets really upset for saying, why did you make me look like the golden boy? That's not who I am.
Even if he didn't do that scene, you know what I mean? Even if they cut that scene out.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you at all, but it's just, I feel like that was like Stephen was like talking to himself, like, what was actually happening to you when that boy was saying that? Were you more obsessed with the idea of I can control the way people see other people? Or were you affected by the fact that I don't really know what I did? I don't even really know what this kid is upset about. It just looked good to me. And like this battle that he was moving forward with, I know how to make it look good.
I got from that he was trying to make something to affect people. So he manipulated the image to make them have the response that he wanted to put forth.
Because he knew that they would cheer. The only way they would cheer is if he put that guy front and center, because he wins the race at the end. So he basically
a little part of me wanted me to go, oh, he's trying to help those two get back together because he kind of broke them up at the start of the year. But
maybe, but I guess.
But I don't think that was it at all.
Maybe he just knows that plays well, and that's not his story.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry, John.
What I took away from it, though, as well as all those things, was that the kid was being very affected by it. I think Gabriel, young Stephen Sammy's line says something like, "Because it didn't work in my movie, and it just looked good," or something kind of general like that. It almost made me think like Sammy wasn't trying to affect himself yet. He was just trying to go work with what I have, and I know I can affect all those people in the audience. That shot of him just they had a lot of these too, where he was just like standing by the projector and everyone was just going nuts around him. Kind of every time they would show a movie.
And he was watching them, yeah.
And I guess there's a piece of me that like imagines an older Spielberg, especially these more tender films that he's been making over the past decade or so, where he's now as much involved with the watching of them as the people
but also,
are.
Like,
do you know what I mean?
When you've made a film,
they're
and you're
more
screening,
personal.
when you've made a film and you're screening it to people, you don't watch the movie, you watch the people.
No, of course,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm still going to stand by this though. I don't think a young Steven Spielberg left this age that we got to see him, this age group, left thinking, I know how to make movies, and it is to tell how I feel about everything. I think he learned that moving forward, and I don't know. I just think it's really interesting that he chose to show us the kernels of that when he was a kid.
Very importantly as well, I think he's one of those few people that forgot what it was like to be a kid, and he didn't forget what it was like to be a kid. Sorry, he didn't forget.
He definitely never forgot. That's all he thinks about.
Yeah, so that's why he's able to relate to child actors so well and draw such performances from. I mean, the story with E.T. with Drew Barrymore is a classic example of that. When he put those two guys on just to make sure that
there's a moment in the documentary where somebody is interviewing him like at some point in the 90s or late 80s, and they're saying to him, like, everybody's calling you a big kid, and what do you think about that? And he says something like, I don't think it's inaccurate, but there's a difference between being childlike and irresponsible, and childlike and mature and responsible, and still understanding how to achieve things and not lose that side of you.
Absolutely remember what it's like to be a kid, and
that's him, dude.
Yeah, to be able to reference that.
Yeah, he knows how to run a set. I'm gonna go ahead and say he's responsible.
Yeah.
Also, he knows how to run a checkbook. Besides, it's funny. You're right about his sort of immaturity in his films, but I think my favorite. You know what my favorite of his movies is Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And I actually think that is a weird exception where I don't know if he confronts it all the way, but he leaves his fucking family at the end of that movie. He literally is like, sorry guys, I'm going to fucking space. Like, I'm so sorry. Yeah. I've been fucking you up. You know that I'm not in the right place. I am joining the circus. I'm leaving my family. And that was an earned decision. That was not very childlike. So
where
I do
they
feel like
the inside of the ship or the one where they didn't?
I don't want to see it. It's Jaws. I don't want to see the inside. I don't want to see it. Don't let me see it. But also, but to that one too, he got the letter. This is the best part of the documentary. He gets a letter from the government that says, "Hey, we're after your success with Jaws, I see you want to go into alien territory, and we just want to discourage you from doing that. We think it would really be really bad for the country, whatever." And he was like, Steve goes, well, now I fucking know I'm doing something right. Now I have to make this movie, and I have to double down on it because clearly I know something. If the government gives enough of a shit to tell me to stop, I'm on. Let's go.
Never, as a government, it's rule 1: don't contact a filmmaker and tell them not to make something.
You immediately tell them you're onto something.
Government.
How hard? Because I can't get over how hilarious this movie was. The breath of Jesus, the whole kissing sequence was really great. Yeah. Judd Hirsch was fucking unbelievable.
Yeah, my audience was howling with laughter and a little bit of terror, I want to say.
Yeah. I mean, she was
rip your shirt and go to bed. I'm sitting Shiva for my sister. Everything
out of his mouth. Even the point at the end before he gets in the cab was great.
It's great.
But I think the hardest my crowd laughed was when the kid is breaking down. He's pissed at him in the hall. And in the end, he goes, "You can never tell anybody about this." He's like, I won't. Unless I make a movie about it. And it's just like, everybody just fucking died.
Yeah.
I don't know what they said after that. Like 2 lines went by. We missed it.
I honked like a donkey in the middle of the movie theater.
dude.
I was just like, yeah.
Because you have to earn it. If he said that, if they said that in the first chapter, we would have rolled our eyes. But he fucking earned it by that point. And then of course he said, "Which I'll never do, which I'll never do." And then the bully comes up. It's
just so charming.
good.
And then I guess for me, the last like really big smile I had on my face, and let's go ahead and call it out there because we're in the spoiler section.
Yep.
David Lynch cast as John Ford is really good casting. It's funny.
Apparently he works for Cheetos.
Did you hear the story about this? About how they asked him?
I heard that Laura Dern had to ask him.
Steve was afraid to ask him, so he called. He didn't even ask him. He just said, "Laura, can you call him and ask him to do this movie?"
And he would only do it. He would only do it if there was Cheetos.
That's what you're saying.
Great.
Yeah.
It's great. The everybody who is into film history, like apparently John Ford really was like that. And there's this great Peter Bogdanovich interview where he's asking all these deep questions, and John Ford's like, "Next!" And he's just screaming at him. But the humor and the humility and the wink that Steven basically says with the final camera move. The boy's walking off, the horizon's in the middle, and Janusz just like lowers it down. It's just enough for you to be like, I feel like that was him just saying, "Well, thank you so much for all these wonderful years we've had together."
That whole last scene, like where he does the look at this horizon, look at that horizon, and it's literally
where's the horizon?
It's hilariously, it's like your entire film school in 2 sentences, right?
Honestly,
there.
And that is how John Ford spoke.
And they set that up, and then they pulled the move with the camera. And I fell out of my fucking chair.
Yeah. Like, so good, dude.
I walked out of that theater just floating on air. I felt so good.
Me too. I mean, honestly, like
such
I know exactly
move.
what you mean.
So
like there were filmmaker in jokes, but they weren't filmmaker in jokes. Like everybody got them because he set them up so well. Like this is comedy. Like it was masterful. The whole thing was masterful.
It was good. Also, it took him how many years passed between 1941 and this movie? Like this is the most successful comedy he's ever made.
Mentioning that travesty.
Catch Me If You Can. Catch Me If You Can. It's got a lot of really great humor in it, but I still wouldn't call it a comedy outright. I mean, maybe. I don't know.
It's an adventure.
It's based on a true story as well. And I just did the musical of that.
It's quirky. This movie was funny. I mean, I laughed.
Yeah,
I can't remember the last time I laughed that much in a theater.
It was funny. It was sad. It hit you in the heart a couple of times. There was some stuff that was just absolutely devastating. It had everything.
Guys, let's talk just really quick. I don't want to end on this note, but the way he filmed, again, so simply. This man's brain is a camera. So simply. Dun, 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 dun,
oh, yeah.
Dun, dun.
Just
close up, extreme close up on that.
Yeah.
Shots of everybody tight close. There wasn't a crazy camera move or anything. That was one of the most effective death scenes.
And then straight to Michelle Williams.
Michelle Williams is fantastic.
Yeah, let's bring it back. We were trying to talk about performances a while ago, Jeff. We went off. I'm sorry, that was probably me. Michelle, I think one thing to the credit of this film is that these characters were so strange. There was enough weirdness to them, just enough eccentricity, especially the adults, that it kind of didn't feel like it was falling into like parental archetypes. He even says in his documentary, we didn't grow up with a mom, we grew up with a sister. Like she wasn't very parental. She was like a sister. She was like another one of us. And I think as soon as you kind of accept that Michelle is going to like, she's not supposed to be an authoritative figure at all, something weird happens. And for me, it didn't really click until she started crying after the tornado. Like I was kind of resisting it a little bit. Like it just seemed a little bit hammy to me until we got to that part. And then I was all in. I'm not gonna lie, I thought she was mentally ill. I thought they were I didn't know what happened to his mother. I didn't know where they were going, but I was like, is this gonna resolve with them eventually realizing that she's, did y'all think that at all? Or
a little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
Like the tornado, and also the monkey helped. There was a lot there where it's pointing towards like a little bit of mental illness, but she pulled the pin on her whole marriage to solve her mental illness. It's like, I'm miserable here, I'm happy there, so I'm going to go there. And she pulled the pin on her whole family. Yeah.
This is the Mad Men era too. I mean, she's a stay-at-home, right? Like she was a housewife. I mean, it's, you're in a box.
Yeah, there's that whole thing where she's like, oh yeah, that was 2 kids ago. I gave that up 2 kids ago.
Yeah. They're not playing anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we
purposeless. She was what you could have been this, you could have been that. Oh, you were so good at this, you know? And it was, so I don't know if mental illness is exactly what it was, but it was certainly teetering on that for sure. Yeah.
Could have played on TV. She could have played Judd Hirsch when he's
God, I wanted more of that. I really wanted more of that, but I'm glad we only got what we got. Yeah.
It's better for it that it was just that scene.
Yeah.
A lot of critics
and when he points at Sam and all the family like looks at Sam and Sam's like,
what happened?
Like, oh, sorry, nothing.
There was a little bit of me that felt like Paul Dano was, maybe this is exactly how that man was. Like, it really did feel very kind of Leave It to Beaver. And I've heard in that documentary, and I've heard other critics and stuff that like Steven's sisters have said that like that Steven like wanted his family to be like that. Like he wanted like the father knows best and here he comes. And I don't know if Paul was channeling a little bit of that. Cause again, it almost seemed unbelievable to me. The delivery of the lines, the parents lived in a place for me that wasn't nearly as grounded as the children. And I know that must've been a choice. But did it work for you guys, or did it almost bumped a little bit every now and then?
They watched a lot of home movies. Like they watched all the movies he filmed as of the family to get into character, to learn how to play these characters. So I feel like that was definitely a choice.
I also think I didn't say this. I hadn't heard this in time for the Armageddon time episode, but James Gray said he wanted to cast celebrities. So he had Anne Hathaway and Jeremy Strong as his parents, because when you're a child, your parents are godlike. They are celebrities to you. You think they're celebrities. You want them to be celebrities. They're these mythical figures to you. So I think it was a nice balance of humanity, but also this sort of not quite on the same plane as the tone of the movie. But I do think the movie aged into it so that Michelle Williams is humanized more and more throughout the chapters. And it's not just a time thing. Like now you're used to her after an hour. I think by the time you're at teenager in California, it's like you're almost a peer as we've gotten to. I think that was intentional.
Yeah, I mean, by the time that scene with him on the side of the road.
Oh, yeah.
She's like, I never did anything with him. I feel like that was, by the time it earned it, by the time it got there, I saw just two friends having a conversation, and she had kind of dropped the performance act of being their mother. And it was really, again, that's design. Like, I know they're all smart enough to take it there. And again, this whole thing evolved into something so much more than you think it's going to be. So tell us what you think, folks. Go ahead and enjoy it. Watch it in the theater. God damn it.
Absolutely.
Dave, you made a joke about it, but this really probably is the first time in his whole career he's had a limited release.
Yes.
This poor bastard.
Like we
saw West Side Story.
We got to see this 2 weeks before everyone else did. Oh my God, go and see this film. Do not miss this film.
Oi.
All right, friends, let's wind it down. Let's end it with our final segment. What you been watching? What you been watching? Where we tell you what we've been watching, give you our recommendations of the week. Now? We got because I forgot to record them again. Because we got a twofer this week, because we got Black Panther episode we're going to record right after this. Now that we're getting a little
really funny,
loose.
because I think we're releasing that first, so we're going to be talking about it in the past as if it's the future.
So, what do you guys want to announce that you've seen in this episode to not keep us hanging? Although, if you want to know everything we've been watching, go listen to our fucking episode, people. We're putting them out.
Jesus. Aggressive
Dave,
marketing.
what have you been watching? Dave, what have you been watching?
I caught up on American Horror Story. I was a couple of seasons behind. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just watched the Death Valley one with the alien, like where they do the vampire alien thing. It's a double feature. I watched that. The vampire one's good. The alien one, you can just skip it and go to the next season.
It's unkind, Dave.
Elizabeth's uncle does a bunch of set decorating on that show. He's been doing it for years for them.
Looks great.
Gee, feel good about yourself
and
now,
I also Doctor Who. For anyone who follows BBC stuff, which is about to get a lot more popular because Disney Plus just signed a deal, I think, to be it's Disney Plus signed a deal to be the home of Doctor Who in the US, and they just threw $100 million at it. So Doctor Who's about to get some fucking budget. No more rubbery creatures. Like they've been doing great lately. So yeah.
Let them keep being you.
No, they don't have.
Don't Disneyfy. Don't go to the mouse house.
They've thrown money, but they don't have creative influence. A deal was signed. It'll remain.
Doesn't sound like Disney.
Creative influence will remain with the BBC. They wanted it. it has a huge following. I caught right up to the end of the current Doctor, and that was a really good season leading into some fucking heartbreakers, and then a what the fuck moment right at the very end of it. So, and I saw it on Twitter. The whole world went like, what the fuck when this happened? Like, because they obviously ended the Doctor, they regenerate. That whole process did not quite go as expected.
All right,
So,
we'll leave
yeah.
it at that.
Yeah.
John, let's hear
Nice.
what you've been watching.
I can't remember if I told you I finished Mandalorian. That was fun. Watched the last most recent episode of Andor.
Wasn't that fun?
Fantastic.
Wasn't it good? That is the best. That is how you do. That is
This
how
how
you
you do
do
it, dude.
fan service right. Yes, it's fan service, but that's how you do it right.
These 3 episodes, the prison arc,
Yeah.
it's fantastic. It's adult filmmaking. It's just
Spielberg,
really not porn.
Your
Just really-
Boston spaceman back in action.
Hey, it's just really, really good. It's just really good storytelling. There's nothing. Just go watch it. I also watched for the first time Brian De Palma's Blowout with John Travolta. He plays a
Oh God, I saw that years ago.
film. Film Sound Man. It's based off Antonioni's Blow Up. John Travolta plays a sound man, and he actually records a murder, and it's all about him getting wrapped up in the in that whole scandal and everything. It's fantastic. It's on HBO. Watch it. What'd you watch, Jeff?
I watched every single episode of The Crown in like 3 days.
Damn it, dude! I'm so excited to watch it. Is it so good?
It's a little different. There are certain things. I mean, of course, it's still The Crown. It's still Peter Morgan. It's The Crown, but
That would make
There's a
sense if I'd seen a single episode of that ever.
It's so good, dude. It's so good, dude. You don't want to love it, but it's so good. It's well
yeah,
done.
it's true.
Oh gosh, please let me watch The Monarchy some more.
Yeah.
No, but
We're all
Dave,
the children of colonists, David.
Dave, we're in the 90s now. Do you have any idea how fucked up the monarchy was in the 90s?
Yes, I do.
Seriously. Oh yeah, you're right.
He's a
'cause you
fully
lived
formed
through it.
adult in the 90s.
I mean,
Yeah.
but it was turmoil. So you were watching a dumpster fire that was apparently put out 20 years after this. Apparently, like, because she just kept living, people like kept giving her respect. They're like, "Good for you, queen. You keep going." But like, they don't even get. I'm not going to spoil. I'm going to say it. I don't give a shit.
Yeah,
They don't
don't
even
say
get through
anything.
No, but they don't get through the 90s. That's how fucked up the 90s were. All of the other decades, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. We can't even get through the 90s. That's how fucked up the 90s were for the monarchy. We don't get through the whole decade.
Well, not much has happened.
I just
in
remember
the
going.
2000s,
I just
right?
remember in the 80s.
But they
being
only have one
dragged-
more episode, so one more episode's gonna have to cover 25
in the
years.
80s,
because
I
they
got
did not
dragged
get
out as
through
a
the
kid to see Prince Charles live at a stadium, and the wind caught his paper. He's like, "Shit, I dropped my bloody paper," and we all lost our shit because like the prince said shit. So,
Didn't somebody throw a fucking egg at him the other day?
yeah, what
Yes.
the
Hear
fuck?
about
took you like a
that?
champ.
I mean,
People
I'm
are
sorry,
stupid.
Australia was doing that 2 years ago. Fuck off. Stop stealing our ideas.
We got there first.
Yeah.
We
And
call them
stop
eggies.
ruining.
We throw little eggies on these motherfuckers.
No, fucking egg boy,
guys,
man.
and-
He nailed the fucking
guys-
Fucking
dickhead
egg boy.
Egg boy. He nailed the politician in the head with an egg, and he became a fucking national hero because that guy was a dickhead.
Yeah. Okay, stop ruining Matisse's. Just ruin the Guggenheim. Trash the Guggenheim, but don't ruin the Matisse's. Come on.
Oh,
they're
those
priceless.
fuckheads. Yeah, stop that. Stop that.
Climate change is fucked up, and we ruined our planet, and you're right. Can I say this is the last thing? How funny is it that Mars? It was like, okay, every year it's like, I think there was water on Mars, which means that there were people on Mars. Every year we learn this lesson that we already learned 10 years ago, and I love how they're like, we can learn more about that. And every single time I want to sit there and be like, can you tell me about how they fucked it all up?
Yeah.
Can you tell me about where the atmosphere went? Because that is more prescient for me. Whether or not there was water there doesn't matter to me at all. How they fucked it up seems like something we should be evaluating a little bit more in this conversation.
Yes.
Okay,
And
thank
where
you
did
guys
they, and
so
where did they
much.
go?
Thank you. Oh, Dave, interesting question. I've only smoked a little bit of weed and watched some of those alien documentaries a couple times in my life. Guys, it is time to wrap up our episode. Go to our feed, Wakanda Forever. We're watching a lot of Oscar movies, a lot of good movies. We watched fucking Tar. We sat through all 2 hours and 40 minutes of it, and it was fucking awesome. All right, so go ahead, listen to our feed, subscribe, like. Dave set up the link tree. Oh, fuck. The 4 of you that are still listening to this point in the episode, thank you so much. We love you to death. Matt, thanks for staying on the treadmill for an hour and 4 minutes. We always love that. We'll see you guys soon.